Greetings Ventures, it's Lauren Gaming, and this is my DanMachi, or Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, Volume 12 light novel review. And unlike my Sword Oratoria Volume 6 review, this review is actually coming out the same week as the book. Not 4 months after. Sorry about that again. And like my previous reviews, the way this video will be structured is the first half of this video will be a general review about the book without any spoilers, and then the second half will contain some spoiler discussion and possibly some predictions as well. So I will timestamp those areas and warn you when I'm going to go into spoiler territory. But if you would just want to go ahead and skip to the spoiler discussion, I will leave a timestamp in the video description. DanMachi Volume 12 is of course written by the author Fujino Omori and illustrated by Suzuhito Yasuda. And as always, YenPress does the translations and the publishing for the North America region. And for a basic opening synopsis of Volume 12, basically after the aftermath of the 3-volume long Xenos arc, we are going back into the dungeon itself. Belle's Familia has rised up in rank, so they are now required to do expeditions, which means they have to go into the dungeon as required by the guild and make some advancements. And throughout this entire volume, we get to see Belle's growth as a character as well as the other members of the group that go down with them during that expedition. And one of the things that Omori-sensei repeats throughout this novel is that Belle has changed. The events of the Xenos arc has changed Belle as a character, and before where he was naive and nervous about making certain decisions, he's now grown more confidence, he's a bit more calm, and he's more collected as well. You see him experimenting with stuff throughout this novel and making decisions right away and always asking for help when he knows he's not able to do stuff on his own. And it is quite a change from the character he used to be, but it's nice to see him grow as a character because he's been through a whole lot, and the time span of the DanMachi volumes, it's only been like five or so months since Volume 1, so Belle has had to grow very quickly because of how fast he levels up. But like I said before, it's not just Belle that makes advancements and grows as a character in this particular volume. The other members of his familia, as well as the people joining him in this expedition, do have a lot of time to shine in here, and they do show a lot of development in here as well, and I very much appreciate that. You see a continuing dynamic between Oka and Welf. Lily in particular shows a lot of growth in this story, and as you can see here, she of course is one of the characters on the light novel cover art. And I decided to display cover 2 on here for light novel volume 2 because it really shows how far Belle and Lily have come to looking like this, looking much more mature, being more experienced in the dungeon. I do think Lily's art is a little bit weird here on the cover art because her hip it's not natural looking at it right there. But in general, for the art that Yasuda sensei provides here in the illustrations throughout the novel, I do think those particular illustrations with Belle do invoke a certain sense of ferocity and visceralness that the light novel clearly describes, and it just translates into the art very well. So props to Yasuda sensei for that, but I still do think that the cover art on here for Lily in particular, it's a little bit off. And of course, besides Oka, Welf, and Lily, the other characters in Belle's party in this expedition do have a lot of time to shine and show their development and skills as well. Mikoto in particular has a lot of awesome standout moments, as well as Aisha, who joins the fray, and Daphne and Cassandra do get a little bit of development here as well. And again, the true essence of this volume is a story about the dungeon itself. Preparing for the expedition, going down the floors of the dungeon, coordinating the group so they can take down monsters, and as well as be careful, set up camp. Seeing all the intricacies that go into an expedition is really a cool thing to see in DanMachi because we don't get that too much in the Sword Oratoria series, even though Loki Familia has the deepest expeditions in the series because they are such a high level familia. Most of the time in Sword Oratoria we see where Loki Familia's limits are as they go like to floor 50 or so, but we don't really see what those middle and lower levels are between 50 and 20 or so. So it's nice to see Belle's party go into that place, and we get to see all the monsters in there, all the floors. And the dungeon floor that gets a focus in this volume really does sound like a wondrous place to be in. It sounds very beautiful of the way it's described, and if this were ever to be animated, I think it would just look amazing and gorgeous seeing this floor being animated. But this is like Season 4 kind of content, and we're still waiting in Season 2. But I really did enjoy this story about the dungeon. We get to see Belle and his group bond and develop as they go down the floors of the dungeon. We get to see the processes they go through and the struggles they go through. And as like the trademark of DanMachi, which I seem to see throughout the volumes, it starts kind of slow, it gets exciting towards the middle, and then it just keeps ramping up and up from there towards the ending. And it's no different here. The very climax of this story involves a big fight, and it's always exciting to read these fights that Omori Sensei does. And besides the climax of this book, which I think is done very well, the middle sections in the book have some points of view from a different character, and I do think it's kind of creepy reading into that character, but it does give us a different perspective of the dungeon itself and the dangers that lie within it, because once again, this is a story about the dungeon, and don't you forget that the dungeon is a dangerous place, and there are casualties, and that's the risk you have to take as an adventurer when you go down into the dungeon itself, and especially the middle and lower levels. And even though this story presents dangers and experiences Bell and his party has not experienced before, this volume does feel like a calm before the storm that's about to come, because if you read through to the ending, it leaves on a big cliffhanger, and it just leaves you wanting for more. So all in all, I really did enjoy this volume. I don't think it's within my top 3 volumes, but it's definitely in the top half of the volumes I've really enjoyed. I really do like how Omori Sensei is able to juggle all his characters, because he's made a lot of them and integrate them into the story so well. And I can't wait to see what's to come in the next volume. It's going to be a long wait because it doesn't come out until March, and I want to read it right now. But even though Volume 12 kind of feels like a pause in this story before the craziness that's going to come in Volume 13, I really do feel like this is a very enjoyable read. You get to learn more about the dungeon, see Bell and his group develop throughout this story as they experience things they have not before, and it's just a really fun time just reading through this book. And that concludes my general review of DanMachi Volume 12. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I'll be heading into a spoiler discussion, so if you don't want to see that, go ahead and look in the video description and find a timestamp to skip to the end of this video. And without further ado, let's get started with the spoiler discussion. Alright, and I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about concerning Volume 12. I like how the book opens up with Bell becoming level 4, and almost feels like it was just a foregone conclusion after the events of the Xenos arc, and that took place over 3 volumes, and he became level 3 since the start of book 7. So, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, he was bound to get level 4 at some point, and of course, like Hestia said during Volume 11, she commented on after Bell's fight with Eyes there, like, just how bad did Eyes beat you? When she was updating his status and see how much it rose. And we see during that moment with Hestia and Bell that Hestia reveals another name that she has, Vesta, which is the Roman name for the Greek goddess Hestia. So it's nice to see how the author is using the Roman and Greek names to mean something important here in the books. And we got to talk about Bell's 2 new skills. One's the escape ability, which was given to him because he runs a lot, and he doesn't really use it in this volume in particular, but I'm curious to see where that escape ability comes into play. And of course, that Oxslayer ability enhances his stats against Minotaur typed enemies. And of course, this is going to come into play when he eventually fights against his proclaimed rival since Volume 11, Asterios. And we see in this volume that Asterios is classified as a level 7 monster by the guild. And we know in Volume 11 how Asterios was very scared to fight Otter, who was level 7. So I think Otter could obviously take on Asterios. But Bell, only being level 4 right now, still has a ways to go. But I think the Oxslayer ability is going to help him a lot. So I could see Bell being level 6 and being able to fight Asterios there. But man, Bell's level 4, and it took him quite a few volumes to get to this point. I'm wondering if we're going to get a time skip at some point, where like we get a time skip after this arc we're heading into with Volume 13. But I feel like beating Asterios is like one of those middle goals on his way to become equal to Eyes. And then, of course, we know one of the things that's been set up in DanMachi is the 3 Great Quest, and the last one being unfinished, which is defeating the one-eyed black dragon, which I believe is close to what the endgame of DanMachi is going to be, because the one-eyed black dragon is of course very special to Eyes due to her circumstances, and Bell seems to be the hero that's destined to defeat that. But we do see here that in addition to one day defeating Asterios, being equal to his idol Eyes, and the eventual defeat of the one-eyed black dragon, we see Fells give Bell a brand new goal for him to strive towards, and that's to reach the bottom of the dungeon. And man, we are in for a long ride if that's where we're going to, because Loki Familia hasn't even reached the bottom of the dungeon yet. So we have, if Bell's going to be involved in that, with all Loki Familia's top dogs being level 6, he has to at least be level 6 before we even see that, and it makes me wonder if he's going to actually be in an expedition with Loki Familia at some point to reach that bottom of the dungeon, because he does not have enough people in his own party, in his own Familia, and even the expansions with Takemikazuchi Familia and Miyake Familia, there's no way he has enough people to try and do that. And because of his Liara's Frieza build, he levels up a lot faster than his allies. And one person I'm really hoping gets to level 3 is Mikoto. But I know, I think Lafia says in the opening of Volume 7 of Sword Art Oratoria that it took her, I believe it was a year. It was either a year or 2 years to become level 2-3. So unless Mikoto gets a lot more experience because she's with Bell, and these particularly insane encounters in the dungeon, because man, they ran the gauntlet in this expedition. But I'm really hoping Mikoto gets to at least level 3, and we do know that Haruhime in this volume gets an upgrade, a new skill through the Grimoire that Aisha gave her, which basically makes her able to cast level up onto multiple party members at the same time. So that's definitely going to help Hestia Familia, but I do think we need other members to truly level up in order for Bell to possibly be in a Loki Familia expedition to reach the bottom of the dungeon, but who knows how long it's going to take for us to get there content-wise. And I really do need to talk more about Lily here. She has a great role here. Despite being level 1, she is pretty much the party coordinator, and it's nice to see that Daphne actually helps her learn how to be a coordinator and organize the party and make the decisions while they're doing the expedition. It's really nice to see Daphne get some development there as a character, as well as Cassandra being very important in this group because she is the one healer that they have. And my god, it's very important to have a healer, especially with the stuff that we see happens in this volume. It almost feels like every single member that joined this expedition was very integral to what happened in this volume, and being able to carry the group through all that. Because Aisha was like a last minute thing. She said, hey guys, I'm going with you. And my god, Aisha was super important in this expedition because she's very experienced doing expeditions before, basically leading everyone through her experience, saying what monsters to avoid. Like, don't go into the water, that's really bad. And when they do get split up from Bell, I don't know how they would have survived without having Aisha there. But speaking of Aisha, she does have a really funny scene when they do make camp on the 24th floor. And she says to Bell that if you're ever lonely, I can go ahead and give you a good time or something to that relevance. And oh my god, like, no, please no, don't touch the innocent Bell. Well, he's not so innocent anymore, because he declares to Haruhime, like, a big part of Zeno's arc was Bell coming to a struggle in whether or not he should keep killing monsters, and he decides, yes, I must do that. I will become a hypocrite, he says to Haruhime, and that's why I'm able to still fight monsters. So we definitely see Bell mature there as a character. Even though there are monsters I really want to protect, the Xenos, there are goals that I have that require me to defeat monsters and defeat Asterios, reach Eyes, and reach the bottom of the dungeon. And besides Aisha and her importance to the group, I think we can't discount Wealth, because oh my god, him being a high smith and being able to do maintenance on their equipment while they're in the dungeon, and his ability to make magic swords, things that are very, very expensive in this universe, and him probably being the best person in the DanMachi universe that can make magic weapons. They have such an important cog in the wheel that is Hestia Familia, with Wealth as their smith, being able to cover up a lot of weaknesses that Lily has as a level 1 supporter, that Haruhime has as a level 1, basically just a buffer. Being able to have those magic weapons as a last resort, not even as a last resort, just being able to use them up almost like they're nothing, is very, very important for this group. And what goes down here in the dungeon, where they're being swarmed by monsters all over. And of course, I have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the irregular monster that's referenced as a Moss Huge, which I think is a weird name. I'm just going to call it a Moss Giant. Shout out to any of you that played RuneScape before, but with the Moss Giant, it really does show us that the dungeon is still unpredictable, being able to produce these irregular monsters, and seeing the Moss Giant's point of view was very creepy because it was being very methodical in how it encountered his enemies and hunted down adventurers in pursuit of those magic stones that make it more powerful. And I was very scared for Chigusa because when you look through the opening color illustrations in this book, you see Chigusa covered in that vine stuff. I'm like, what's going on here? And then you get to see it's the Moss Giant seed being planted into Chigusa. And that sounds really wrong. It was planted into her shoulder, not that kind of seed. And of course the other adventurers, particularly the elf and the dwarf from Volume 8 that were pursuing Aina, they're injured here from that monster being hunted down. And that makes me wonder, it's like, even though Belle's expedition is cut short, I'm pretty sure they'll still get credit for this, for rescuing 2 different Familia parties. Because, man, it's like the guild requires you to go down to an expedition, reach a floor, gather some stuff. But I think defeating the regular and rescuing 2 different Familias is pretty substantial and lets them off the hook with their expedition. And it did get a lot of stuff like that Underpearl, thanks to the amazingness that is Mikoto's ninja skills. My god. But I did feel bad for that elf missing that arm. Like, I think it was mentioned almost 3 times, like, we kept the arm, but it's already decomposing, so we can't really reattach. I'm like, oh my god, man, I feel really bad. But that's the danger you have to accept as an adventurer going into the dungeon, and especially the lower levels like they are here. And of course, like I said before, Belle gets separated from the group, and he meets another Xenos. Like, I was wondering, like, the Xenos arc is over, but surely they're gonna pop up here and there, and we do meet one of them here. The first one we've seen this one because she's a mermaid, Mari. And of course, she can't always be traveling with Xenos because she requires water to travel. But one interesting thing that happened here before his encounter with Mari was the other mermaids trying to use their charm ability on Belle and it not working. And like we know in Volume 7, somehow Belle is able to truly resist the charms of Ishtar. And we know he also resists Freya as well, and that's what interests them in Belle. And I'm guessing that immunity has a lot to do with his Lavaris freeze skill, being able to focus on trying to catch up to eyes. So he has no time for any charms. He has no time for that. But back to his meeting with Mari, it's nice to see that the Xenos aren't going to be just sidelined and ignored until they really do show up and become relevant again. It's nice to see that we're going to see them here and there with those mentions. And Mari does seem like a fun character, despite the brief time that we've seen her, and I think we will see her again, and she's going to be really helpful for Belle's party anytime they do go back onto the 25th floor and below when it comes to those water-oriented floors. But let's talk about that final fight with Belle arriving in the nick of time, charging his Argonaut to its full extent, increased from its max charge of 3 minutes to 4 minutes, and using Firebolt to just completely eviscerate all the monsters that are there, with Lily getting the cue from Belle to take cover with the party, and it also taking down the Moss Giant a little bit after it consumed a ton of magic stones, which is kind of a cool twist because you just thought that the past parade that the Moss Huge was doing against Belle's party was the extent of its plan to weaken them. Not only did the Moss Giants use the past parade to completely exhaust the expedition group, use up the resources and magic swords, and the level boost, he also used that as a way for them to defeat monsters and devour all the magic stones while the expedition group is, of course, busy still fighting monsters. And it's very scary how a irregular can set all of this up, and it's very fortunate to the 2 Familias that Belle's group found that they were able to be saved. And thank God that Belle defeated this thing then, because who knows how much more powerful this guy was going to become if left alone. Of course, we know that the guild probably would have issued a quest for someone like Loki Familia to come down, because Loki Familia would have no struggles taking this thing down. Belle took it down as a level 4, so just send someone like Eyes down there and take care of that giant. But it's a good thing that it got defeated when it did, because who knows how many more people would have died to this thing if Belle's party didn't come there and take care of the problem there. But it's really cool seeing Belle experiment more with its Argonaut ability, seeing him charge over 2 seconds into his foot to make it in time to block the attack that the Moss Giant was going to do on Lily with his ambush. And of course, again, that 4-minute charge to eviscerate almost like all the monsters there and weaken that Moss Huge. Into that final fight where he puts his Firebolt magic into the Hestian knife, because we hear towards the beginning of the book that the Hesti knife's able to conduct magic or something along those lines, and he uses that along with his Argonaut ability, charging into the knife, being able to affect both the fire that's now inside the knife and the knife itself, and use that to basically just destroy the Mos Huge. If that ever gets animated, it's going to be so cool to watch. And of course, the final thing that happens in this volume, which affects me greatly because Ryu is my favorite character in the series, and we get a mention of her in the final 2 freaking pages, and I wish I never got that because I already knew she was going to be involved in volume 13 because I know what the cover looks like. She's in it. And then we get these 2 pages at the very end of this novel, and it's accusing Ryu of murdering someone on floor 18. But the one thing that caught my eye immediately is that the supposed adventurer that saw this murder happen called the person that committed the murder a human, but we know that Ryu is obviously an elf. So I'm wondering, he did call the person Gale Win, which is Ryu of course, but if he thought he saw a human, there's no way it could have been Ryu, right? Unless there was like an imposter, or it's possibly a translation error. But I really do want to believe in Ryu because she's my favorite character, and I know despite her hatred for the evils, I can't see her just killing someone that's not related to the evils. So that has to be what happened if she did kill someone in that instance. But we know after the events of Volume 11, the Xenos arc in particular, that more people know about the other entrances to the dungeon, the labyrinth Gnosis, and we know that the evils are working within that place. And if you read Sword Art Tutorial Volume 5, you know that Ryu encountered some evils back then, right before the entrance into Gnosis, and she was interrogating them. So we know that the evils are probably going to show up here, knowing that this is floor 18 where this happens on, and that's where one of the entrances to Gnosis is. It's just a matter of what exactly are the evils going to be doing, because since more people know about Gnosis, I think that the evils are going to try and make a move here. And of course, Ryu is going to be involved in that in some way, because we also know in Volume 11, when Osvi asks for Ryu's help, she does offer some information on the evils. So something is being set up here for a evils confrontation, but I'm really excited that the next volume is going to have a big focus on Ryu. But we gotta wait until March for that, and that's a long wait. Oh. And of course, I'd love to talk more about the stuff that happened in Volume 12 and the things I hope are going to happen in Volume 13 and what I think are going to happen in Volume 13. But this video can't be 10 hours long, and that also opens up a good way for you guys to interact in the comments down below. I'd like to know what your thoughts were about this volume. What particular scenes did you like? What characters were your favorites in this particular volume? And what are your thoughts on what's happening in the overall plot in DanMachi? What do you think is going to happen in 13? I don't want to know any spoilers for those of you that already have read ahead, like in summaries or no Japanese. I've read Volume 13 and the synopsis for Volume 14 that's going to come out in Japan in December. I don't want to know any of that. Please don't leave that in the comments below. I'll be very, very angry, and you don't want that. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. The next review is going to be about Volume 7 of Sword Art Oratoria, and it's definitely coming out within a timely manner and not 3-4 months after the volume's release, so look forward to that probably next week, I'd say, because I'm still in the middle of reading it and having to juggle some other stuff as well. But man, it feels so good to read DanMachi books again, but now we gotta wait 4 or 5 months for Sword Art Oratoria 8 and Light Novel 13 in the main series. But in the meantime, we have the mobile game to play through if you enjoyed the DanMachi mobile game Omori Freeze, and of course the DanMachi movie Heir of the Orion, which airs in February in Japan, and hopefully that gets spread to other areas as well through Sentai Filmworks, who licenses both the DanMachi main series anime and the Sword Art Oratoria series as well. But man, guys, I just love this franchise so much, and every time I get a new installment of the light novel, I'm just so happy. So these last few days have been very, very happy for me, being able to read 2 different DanMachi books. But guys, if you like this video, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this. Follow me on Twitter if you want to stay updated what I'm doing. And of course, show my Discord for just DanMachi discussion, as well as anime, manga, and light novel general discussion as well. And as always, guys, continue enjoying your time adventuring in Arario and the dungeon. This is Lauren Gaming, and I'm signing out.